Hey everybody, I'm going to show you a tool that makes it easier to create GreenSock or GSAP animations inside of Storyline. I have several videos, you can check them out there just on how to get started with GSAP or how to get started with GreenSock inside of Storyline. It already is included out of the box. It doesn't take a lot of code to do, but this tool is designed to help you become even quicker or to see all the different options for the animation. And in fact, the day that this video comes out is the same day I'm going to be speaking at the Articulate User Conference. In the Articulate User Conference at DevLearn, I'm going to show exactly this tool. So for those of you who are at the conference, this is a way for you to review what was covered during that session. But for those of you who were not at the conference, this is basically allows you to see what I'm going to be sharing there as well. So let's go ahead and dive into this tool, and you can get to this tool by going to learningdojo.ninja/javascript-snippets/gsap or GSAP. And this allows you to see all the different properties. And if you're not familiar with GSAP, you can just type in gsap.com. And if you go into resources, it does tell you all the different easing, animations, other things like that. It allows you to go beyond what comes out of the box inside of Storyline. Now, Storyline uses the GSAP library to do its animations, but it's very restrictive. It's very basic as far as what you can do. So using this tool allows you, or even using GSAP in general, just allows you to take advantage of it. So there are a couple of key elements to this tool. The first part is the model ID. Now I get asked, why do you do this instead of the accessibility text? In my mind, the accessibility text is more likely to change and add on words, and it has multiple words than the model ID is. Now, the model ID can change if you go from a layer or a page or something like that. The model ID can change, but most likely you're not going to be copying and pasting all the time as much as you would like updating the accessibility text. I may be wrong there, but this is just a way to get a unique ID. I hope in the future that Storyline allows us to just look at this ID without having to preview it. But for now, what we can do is we can just go find the ID by previewing our course. And I'm going to animate this square right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit preview. And I want to find out what the ID of that square is. So once it's previewed, it's simple to go into the inspect window. Then I just click on this arrow right here. This allows me to select the object and really drill down to the basic part of that object. Now, if I scroll up here, you'll notice that there is this vector or slide object vector shape. This is what gives me the model ID. So I could just go ahead and copy that and come over here and paste that right there, which is already kind of pasted there. That's how I target that object. And so anytime I want to target a different object, I select the arrow, come to that object, just scroll up until you see this slide object. And once you've done it a few times, it's pretty easy to do. It's pretty quick to do as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And now we're going to animate this. So I'm going to click on animate square and I'm going to add a JavaScript. So execute JavaScript. And let's make sure that this happens when the user clicks. That when part is very crucial. So I'm going to do that and click on this JavaScript window. Now what I'm going to do is animate these different properties. Really, animation comes down to starting properties and ending properties. I always call it point A, what the properties are when it starts or before it starts, and point B, what the properties are when the animation ends. That's really what animation is basically, is animating from one point to another point and changing the properties. And what properties are we changing? Well, that really comes down to, if I click this here, it's basically under the Format tab, you have things like X and Y and width and height and rotation and other things like that. It allows you to adjust those properties. So let's come back in here. All those properties that we can animate are in these different accordion views. We're going to start out with position, and I'm going to change the X value, which goes across, X goes across, Y goes up and down. So we're going to start out with the X value, and I'm going to change this to 200. And this little animation preview, which I can expand out, make it a little bit bigger, is not one-to-one. It's not going to be a perfect translation of like, if you do this, this is what it's going to look like inside a Storyline. But it at least tells you what the animation is going to kind of look like or do. So I'm also going to come in here and apply the Y value. So I'm going to update this to 400. So by doing that, it's now added in my code. It's identifying that object, and you can see right here, it's putting it inside of a variable called object1. That variable name could be whatever you want. So you can name it square1, square2, whatever. You may need to change it if you're animating more than one thing inside of one JavaScript. So I'm just going to keep it as object1. And here's my properties that I'm going to animate to. So if I go ahead and click on copy for that code here, and then I come into my code here, I'm going to paste that inside of there. So now I have the properties of X, I have the properties of Y. So if I click OK, let's go ahead and preview that and see what it looks like here. So if I click animate square, notice how it moves over a little bit and goes down. So it automatically kind of moves for us. So that's all I have to do is go in and change the different properties and then copy and paste. So we have things like scale. If I want this to double in size, I can add 2. If I want this to be just increase a little bit, I can do something like 1.2. Whenever I've created different effects of you're hovering over objects and you just want it to increase, I usually do about 1.2, so it just increases slightly. You also have scale X. Let me just go ahead and do that. You can see that it just stretches out the width. That's basically the width, and then scale Y is the height if I wanted to adjust this square to be different sizes. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and copy that and just show you what's happening here. So I'm going to go back into here, click on execute JavaScript, paste that in there, click OK, and then let's go ahead and preview this. So you can see here, if I click on animate square, it's moving down, but it's also squishing that a little bit. That probably wouldn't work if you have text or images, so you may want to be careful with that. But with shapes, you can go ahead and stretch it out, have something kind of expand, and then put some text on there afterwards or something. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And you can explore this. You can explore the different things that it does, but let's go into rotation. And if I click on rotation here, I'm going to go ahead and click rotation. And then you can see that it adds rotation at 90 degrees there. Let's go ahead and do a full 360 degrees. It's going to spin completely. Now I'm going to click on copy code. Let's go in here and execute our JavaScript. So I'm going to select that, hit paste, and then I'm going to click OK. Now I'm going to preview that and see what it's like here. And I'm going to click animate square. So now it basically rotates. Let's say I don't want it to move and I just want it to rotate. So I'm going to undo X and Y, and then I'm going to go into rotation, and then I'm just going to have it spin. Well, actually, before we even do that, let's have this come back. So you could have X and Y, and then you could come into miscellaneous, or sorry, timing, and you can have this repeat twice. So notice how it jumps back a couple of times. Well, I copy that code. Let's go into here and let's paste that and click OK. Now, if I preview it and click that, notice how it repeats a couple of times. Well, it jumps back to the beginning. What if I don't want it to jump back to the beginning? Well, you can do something like yo-yo. So yo-yo works in combination with repeat. And if I click copy here, come back into here, click on execute JavaScript, and then paste that, now that will work in conjunction. So if I go ahead and do that, it'll kind of bounce back. So I'm going to click on animate square, and it's going to bounce back into its spot and then come back. So it's still kind of doing the action twice, but it bounces back, and so it looks a little bit smoother in that case. Now, yo-yo does not work unless you have repeat enabled. So I'm going to disable that for now. And there's one little hack with repeat. You could actually, if you want it to continue to repeat, you can do -1. So I'm going to just uncheck where it says X and Y. I'm going to go back into timing and make sure repeat is selected as -1. Now, there is a little bit of an issue with my code here, which will be fixed before this video comes out, but it places it within quotes, which is a little bit weird. Oh, I had the repeat here. I need to also have the rotation. I forgot about that. So we need to rotate it and do repeat -1. I'm going to click on copy. Let's go back in here. That's why it wasn't working. So I'll paste that, and then now it will repeat. Some of them depend on you actually animating something, so keep that in mind. I'm going to click on animate square, and you can see that it's going to repeat over and over. But notice how it starts to speeds up at the very beginning, and it starts to slow down at the end. That is something called easing. Easing basically allows you to add a little bit more realistic effects, like starting to slow down, momentum, bouncing, other things like that. Now you can control or remove that easing by coming back into here and then going into timing right here. And then if I apply a none easing, then it should be a consistent speed the entire time. And you can see that right there. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, paste it into here, and click OK. Now, if I preview this and click animate square, you can see that it's animating at a consistent speed. There are other types of easing that I can do. I'm going to just uncheck where it says repeat, and I'm going to go back into just moving an object, and I'm going to have this just fall down. Let's go back into our timing, and under easing, I'm going to have this bounce out. So you can see that it kind of bounces off the ground there a little bit. So it gives me a nice little bounce effect. Let's go back in here. I'm going to click on execute JavaScript, go ahead and replace that and click OK. Now I'm going to preview this, and you'll notice how this kind of falls down and then bounces. So these are more realistic effects easing allows us to apply, and I'll talk about what the word out and in means here in a second. But if I click on animate square, you'll notice how it kind of bounces right there. So the out coming into here, you'll notice out, but if I go back into these different options, there's also in, out, and in. In is the start of the animation. So if you want the bounce to happen at the beginning, you would select in. If you want the bounce to happen at the end, you would select out. If you want it to happen at the beginning and the end, you would do in, out. And so these are the different options for this type of effect here. So you can play around with that. If you like the easing, great. If you don't like the easing, you can go ahead and remove the easing by selecting done. Now I'm going to get rid of the rotation. I'm going to go back into the position. Something that you may run into, and let's just keep that easing for now, but let's preview this. If you use just X and Y, it's going to do its best for position of moving it down 400. The problem is Storyline changes the size. Even though it's not responsive, the size of the stage does change. So even though this looks good and it's in a good position, if I preview this from a tablet portrait and click animate square, notice how it goes off the stage. That's because it's still moving 400 pixels, but the 400 pixels is no longer needed because the stage size is a little bit smaller. Storyline does a bunch of calculations to make it a little bit smaller. So it's not the most accurate. So what you could do is actually use X% and Y%. This basically takes into account the width of the object. So if I take the width of the object and I do 100, it's going to take what the width of the object was. And you can kind of tell this space right here is the same space as this object here. If I do 50, it's only going to take half the space here. So a percentage is the percentage. If it's X, it's the percentage of the width. If it's Y, it's the percentage of the height. So I could come in here, and if I want to do 200%, I can do 200%. If I wanted it to go to the left, I can go ahead and do 100% or negative 100, and it will move it the same width over. So it's a little bit more accurate here. Let's adjust the Y. So I'm going to move it down 100. So I'm going to copy that code here. I'm going to go back into execute JavaScript, and I'm going to paste that. If I click OK here and preview it, it's now going to move that object a little bit better on the different screen sizes, and I'll show you. So if I go back into my desktop and click animate square, notice how it moves about that position. If I go into tablet portrait, click on animate square, it's very similar. So it's a little bit more accurate. It's not perfect, but it's a little bit more accurate. If you want it pixel perfect, there's a lot more calculation that you have to do. So you have to figure out the stage width and height. You have to divide the width and height of the object. I do have that code, and at the end of this video, I will link a video where I talk about that. It takes a lot more code to generate, and I'm trying to keep this tool as simple as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and just exit that out. So play around with these different options. The scale, if you select scale X, if you go into rotation, there's skew as well. So it will skew the object on the X value or the Y value to get some different cool effects. Play around with the timing. You can adjust the duration of the animation. You can adjust the delay so it doesn't happen for a couple of seconds. And then there's other options like opacity, so you can adjust the opacity. This gives you so much more flexibility. You can have things continuously animating. You can have things bouncing off of each other. You can have objects that bounce off the stage and then continues to move using the X value. There's a lot that you can do here. And this tool is hopefully, if you are a JavaScript developer, hopefully it at least allows you to see the different options. You can copy and paste them into Storyline. And then you can edit right within Storyline. But if you're not a JavaScript developer, hopefully this makes it a whole lot easier to take advantage of some of this code and just easily copy and paste it. Now, if I wanted to apply this code to a different object, what I would have to do is find out the ID of that object. Now, I don't necessarily need to change this to object 1 or change to object 1 if it's a different trigger, and you'll see why here. So if I come into inspect, and then I go into that arrow up on the top left, I select the rectangle, scroll up and then see the ID right there. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to paste it there. Now watch what happens if I copy this code, come into Storyline, and then add on for this button, I'm going to add on the JavaScript here, and I'm not going to change object 1. Even though this one is called object 1, it should not actually affect it. So let's go ahead and preview. So I'm going to click on animate triangle, and notice it just moves that. I'm going to click animate square, it just moves that. The reason why that works is because Storyline keeps the individual codes separate. And so it doesn't have any reference. It kind of lives in its own little world. It doesn't have any reference of that other object. The only reason why I would need to change object 1 to something else is if I'm running the code at the same time. So if I was to copy this code, which is the triangle code, and if I was to paste it the same time as the square, that would not work because it's trying, within the same little world here, it's trying to reference two different objects, or it's saying do this object and do that. So really it would probably just end up doing this. So this case, I would need to name it to be something else. So object 2. And if I do that, then I can animate two things at one time. So if I was going to animate something at the very beginning of the timeline, it would all be in one trigger, which means I would have to rename my objects. So now if I come into animate square, it animates both. So just something to keep in mind, that's the only time you'll have to change the name of those objects. You'll have to change it inside of the variable, and you'll have to change it inside of the GSAP code, just this spot right here. Just has to match. Whatever you name it here has to match there. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. If you want to check out more, head on over to my website at learningdojo.ninja. If you go to learningdojo.ninja, you can see all my previous blog posts. You can also download free templates in Articulate Storyline and XAPI. And you can check out full courses covering everything from A to Z in Articulate Storyline 360, Adobe Captivate, XAPI Fundamentals, Camtasia, Articulate Rise, Custom SCORM, and HTML5 video. Also, if you like this video, head on over to my YouTube channel, click the like button, and subscribe to my channel, and click on the bell notification so you get notified of all future videos as they come out. That really helps my channel, allows me to continue to create these videos for you to really help you become the best learning developer that you can be and really extend these e-learning authoring tools. If you want to see anything else, also make a comment down below. Make sure that you check out the other video that's linked at the end of this video. But that's all I have for today, so thanks everyone, and I'll see you next time.